Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we got some big news to talk about Ryan Garcia and Mario Barrios. I also want to talk about Vergil Ortiz versus John Boots Ennis because that fight just seems like, from where we were in November talking about that fight, they have the face-off after the Lubin fight. I think everybody agreed that this fight's going to happen, this fight's next, they're going to make it, everybody wants it. Fast forward a week and there was already talks from the Vergil Ortiz camp that the fight is probably not going to get made, and now we fast forward to today, halfway through January, 2 months later, saying, yeah, this fight, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, all right? It doesn't look like we're going to see Jerome Boots Ennis versus Vergil Ortiz. Well, at least not next. I would be very surprised at the current state of the dealings that we're going to see Jerome Boots Ennis versus Vergil Ortiz within the next 6 months. Maybe they both take one fight and then it's next, but that could be ambitious, because if they don't want it right now, I don't see what changes over the next 6 to 8 months to want it later. The fighters aren't going to change. Neither of them are likely to get a belt within that next 6 months. And I'll talk about why I believe that neither of them will get a belt in the next 6 months. But let's start by talking about Mario Barrios and Ryan Garcia. All right, so it is official. Ryan Garcia will be taking on Mario Barrios at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, February 21. Now, this is for the WBC welterweight belt, obviously, that Mario Barrios has had for 2 fights now, the Abel Ramos one and the Manny Pacquiao one. Look, my problem with this fight is it is such an undeserving title shot for Ryan Garcia. And it is clear to me, and it has been clear over the past 18 months, if not longer, that the WBC's main priority is money. We see how Terence Crawford spoke about how he had to pay the fees for the belt and the problems with money there. We see the WBC giving Manny Pacquiao a title shot. That's a money fight, all right? You see him giving Keith Thurman the Fundora fight. That is a base on money fight, all right? These have got no real reason of happening apart from money, all right? Keith Thurman does not deserve a title shot, all right? Least of all at Super Welter. Fundora should be in there with Vergil Ortiz. But, you have Vergil Ortiz defending a WBC interim, you have Fundora defending a WBC full belt, and you get double the money. We look at Jake Paul being elevated into the top 15 at cruiserweight. These are all decisions based on money, and this is the latest version of this decision-making is Ryan Garcia, someone that is nowhere near deserving of a title shot, being thrusted into a title shot. If you're looking at names that Mario Barrios should probably be facing, you're probably looking at Suleiman Sissoko. I know the division isn't stacked, all right? The division isn't stacked, but there's people in there that have been grinding that deserve a title shot. Ryan Garcia is getting a title shot off the basis of cheating against Devin Haney, receiving a year ban that was nowhere near long enough, followed up by a piss-poor performance where he gets slapped up and dropped against Rolly Romero, which in the end was a title fight that he shouldn't have been in either. And now fast forward to this, where he's in a title shot against Mario Barrios for what reason I am so unbeknownst about. And the funniest thing about the fight to me is I think Ryan Garcia wins. I think Ryan Garcia beats Mario Barrios. Mario Barrios is not an exceptional fighter. He's not an exceptional champion. I think he's actually been quite a poor champion. He failed to beat Abel Ramos. He gets dropped in that fight. He then proceeds to take on a 4-5-year retired Manny Pacquiao at 46 years of age. And in my opinion, lost to Manny Pacquiao. And is now taking on Ryan Garcia. I don't expect him to beat Ryan Garcia, all right? I don't think Ryan Garcia is anything elite either, but I do appreciate that I think Ryan Garcia, in the right headspace, when he's in there to win, when he's in there to fight, can run it with some of the best in the world, all right? Not necessarily beat them, but at least compete. I think he showed that against Devin Haney. I know he was juiced up, all right? But that doesn't take away from the technical basis that Ryan Garcia has, all right? Being juiced up does not make you a technically good fighter. It doesn't give you the boxing IQ that he did present against Devin Haney, all right? It's well and truly unfair to be on steroids, but, the steroids are going to give you massive power enhancements and massive cardio enhancements, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to land your shots. But he showed in that Devin Haney fight that against a skilled boxer, he can land his shots. And Mario Barrios is quite a good technical boxer, but I don't think he's anything exceptional. He's not great at any one thing, and I wouldn't say he's overall a breathtaking boxer. So funny enough, there's a good chance that come March, Ryan Garcia is the WBC welterweight champion off the back of being slapped up against Rolly Romero and cheating against Devin Haney, which I found astonishing that we've come to this point. But like I said, it all comes down to money. All right, last thing before we talk about Vergil Ortiz and John Boots Ennis is Richards and Hitchens is being spoken about to be the co-main event for Garcia versus Mario Barrios. Talks about him taking on Oscar Duarte. Now, Oscar Duarte, since losing to Ryan Garcia in 2023, he's gone 4 fights undefeated, 5 fights undefeated. I think it's 4, including that Jojo Diaz fight, which was his comeback fight. It's not a horrible run. It's not the worst run you're ever going to see to get a title fight. I guess I look more at Richards and Hitchens and say, how come this fight isn't against Keyshawn Davis? Why is Keyshawn Davis fighting Jermaine Ortiz and you're taking on Oscar Duarte? You know, I have respect for Richards and Hitchens. He beat Liam Paro, and that is a very, very difficult thing to do. The fight against George Kambosos is a bit here nor there. You know, it is George Kambosos, the former, unified world champion, but at the same time, it's a George Kambosos Jr. that I think we all agree was past his peak. Didn't show his best against Jake Wiley, and then got blasted out of there by Richards and Hitchens. And for me, at super lightweight, George Kambosos Jr. doesn't appear big enough for me, and that is a problem. I guess in terms of Hitchens versus Oscar Duarte, it should be a good fight, but I expect Hitchens to win, and that's my problem. I don't expect Oscar Duarte to really come in and compete at the highest level and beat Hitchens. Saying that, there's not a whole lot of other options. The big name that I'd like to see him fight is Adam Azim, but Adam Azim's got a fight coming up against Gustavo Lemos. And then you look at the rest of the division, you're saying Frank Martin, entertaining. He showed a great KO victory in his last fight, but is he deserving of a title shot yet? Ernesto Mercado, Lindolfo Delgado. I mean, there's not a lot left. Lindolfo Delgado fought in November, so he's not going to back up in February. Biarsalanov is probably the most deserving of the title shot, but he's not going to get that fight. So Richards and Hitchens versus Oscar Duarte, I don't hate it as a co-main event. I just hope that we don't see the Liam Paro fight at the back end of 2024, followed by George Kambosos Jr., followed by Oscar Duarte, followed by another guy that we're not really interested in seeing. Richards and Hitchens holds himself as calling himself the best super lightweight out there. We'll go and prove it. Go and fight the big boys, all right? And I don't classify Oscar Duarte at the second one of those big boys. All right, Vergil Ortiz versus Boots Ennis. This fight here is getting away from us, guys, and it is very, very disappointing because I think we all wanted to see it. After that Lubin fight, seeing Ortiz and Giron face off, we were all hoping and expecting and excited to see this fight. And as much as I've said, I hate to see it fought for no belt. You know, I classify the WBC interim belt as a no belt at the moment because he's held it for 2 years. What's he been given for holding that belt? All right, he hasn't been given a shot at the title. All right, they're keeping Sebastian Fundora on ice, fighting Keith Thurman. Whenever that fight's going to happen, by the way, which we need to make a separate video on because the injury, I don't believe, was a 4 or 5 month injury. So whatever the fuck is holding that up, which I believe is Fundora, needs to be sorted out. But in terms of Vergil Ortiz and Boots Ennis, we've got 2 sides of this story, all right? I believe Jerome Boots Ennis, I believe Eddie Hearn wants this fight, are making this fight, and are probably the ones sacrificing trying to make this fight. I believe Vergil Ortiz Jr. wants this fight because I've seen multiple statements from him, multiple times him talking that he doesn't care about belts, he doesn't care about titles. He wants to make the big fights. He believes he is the best in the world, and he wants to prove that. And I do believe that from Vergil Ortiz because nothing in his career so far has shown me that he isn't that guy. Team Vergil Ortiz and Golden Boy Oscar De La Hoya are the people that are fucking around and not making this fight. All right, the fact that I'm hearing Oscar De La Hoya come out and say, we're looking at the Errol Spence fight, we're looking at the Fundora fight, shows me that this guy has no ambition in fighting John Boots Ennis.
Eddie Hearn is begging the media for this Boots and Vergil Ortiz fight. It's so stupid as a promoter to pigeonhole your fighter into one opponent. You lose your negotiating power, which ends up being a lot of lost money for your fighter. Also, every time a manager tries to be a hero and negotiate behind the promoter's back, they lose money for the fighter. And at the same time, violate the Muhammad Ali Act. And you know what? I'm gonna start sending legal letters enforcing this because I'm fucking tired of it. Some managers are just full of shit and I will be exposing them, trust me. Look, Vergil can fight 2 or 3 different guys in mega fights. He's got options. Imagine him with Errol Spence at Dallas Cowboys Stadium or Sebastian Fundora in a mega fight in Vegas. Boots is part of the plan, but it doesn't have to be next. But Eddie, since you're so desperate to make this fight, then let's do this. 60-40 for Vergil and 5% to the winner. Because I'm generous and I'm not moving off those numbers. You're the one who's begging for this fight. So let's go.
And that's probably a reflection of Vergil Ortiz believes he can beat John Boots Ennis. Everybody around him doesn't. All right? It is clear that Golden Boy want to keep Vergil Ortiz Jr. the money maker, and unfortunately, he loses that money-making streak and what he can make in the future if he loses to Jerome Boots Ennis, all right? He won't get that Sebastian Fundora fight, which is a money fight. He won't get an Errol Spence fight, which is a money fight. And whoever else, whether it's a Charlo, whoever the fuck he wants to fight to make big money, he won't get because of the basis of losing to Jerome Boots Ennis. Now, Golden Boy and Oscar De La Hoya have come out and said that they are willing to make the fight if Eddie Hearn and Jerome Boots Ennis are willing to make the sacrifice of not being paid the amount. Now, they're looking at 60-40 split, with Jerome Boots Ennis obviously getting the 40, and the winner getting an extra 5%, which basically ends up being 65% to 35%, hopefully in their favor of Vergil Ortiz. Now, the problem with this is, at first, the excuse was the money, all right? And it's still the excuse now. Now, I'm not sure why Eddie Hearn, if he's so confident in Jerome Boots Ennis' ability and that he's going to win the fight, doesn't just say, yep, give us the 60-40. Now, Boxing Scene have just posted as well on Instagram saying that they've spoken to Oscar De La Hoya and he's heard no contact from Eddie Hearn and that they are not interested in making this fight. These are big problems, man. These are the problems that we, have spent the past 15, 20 years seeing in boxing, and that is the big names not fighting each other, and most of the time it is based off money. And honestly, I don't really have a solution for you, because if the two guys don't want to sign the contract, there's nothing there to make them sign that contract, and that's the problem. Jerome Boots Ennis doesn't have a belt, all right? Jerome Boots Ennis isn't a mandatory. There's nothing going on here apart from everybody wants to see this fight, and Oscar De La Hoya doesn't want to make it. Where does this go from now? I don't really know. They're talking about Fundora and Errol Spence. Errol Spence is doable, although Fundora was trying to fight Errol Spence, and Errol Spence keeps saying that he's in the gym, but I'm not seeing any fight announcements. I'm not seeing shit from him or his team that's saying that he's getting close to an announcement for a fight. Sebastian Fundora, like I said, he's sitting on ice, injured, waiting around for Keith Thurman, who, I don't know, is he waiting for Keith Thurman to turn 50? What the fuck are we waiting around for that fight? All right, I get Sebastian Fundora got injured, but he got injured in November or October. We're now halfway through January. Even if you announce the fight to be taking place next month, that's still another month. It's another 4 fucking weeks. What are we waiting around for? It's not, Fundora didn't go and have surgery. Fundora had some contusion in his arm or some shit, all right? Let's get this going, all right? I don't want to see Keith Thurman versus Fundora in any way. But the fact that we're having to wait another 3 or 4 months pisses me off, because what pisses me off the most is Vergil Ortiz is sitting there with that interim belt and he hasn't been able to get that fight for 2 years, all right? What are we doing here? All right, that is my spiel on Vergil Ortiz and Boots Ennis. Now let's talk about Shiraz and Pacheco. Shiraz and Pacheco, they have failed to reach a deal. The WBO has ordered a purse bid. This is their statement. If the parties still fail to reach an agreement, the fighters will wait for further instructions from the WBO. All promoters registered with the organization will be eligible to participate in the purse bid. The minimum bid is set at $300,000. The winning amount will be split 50-50 if the fight is staged on neutral ground, or 60-40 in favor of the boxer fighting on the road. So to give you a real life example of that, we just saw Sabril Matias versus Dalton Smith. Subriel Matias' team won the purse bid of $1.7 million compared to Matchroom's bid of $1.3 or $1.6 million, which meant that they could stage the fight wherever they wanted. Dalton Smith had to come over to New York to fight, which in these circumstances means Dalton Smith would get a 60-40 cut of the fight because Subriel Matias has that home advantage. Now, Shiraz versus Pacheco. I feel like the broad view of this fight now is Shiraz will smoke Pacheco. I don't think I'm out of line saying that. What we've seen from Pacheco recently in his last 3 fights, Sajo, Nelson, and Macumbi haven't been spectacular. Shiraz jumps into super middle and smashes Edgar Berlanga. So I think the general consensus would be Shiraz wins this fight. In terms of why it's not being made, wouldn't have a clue. Pacheco probably is the only one that would be stalling this fight. I don't see why Shiraz would have any qualms with taking this fight. Shiraz has multiple offers. He's got either to take on Pacheco or to take on Mbili, and for me, the easy answer would be Pacheco every day of the week. All right, get Pacheco now. Mbili, even though the fight didn't go his way against Lester Martinez, ends in a draw, the guy is a monster, and Pacheco's the easier fight. All right, if you're going to get a belt, you're going to take the easier fight. Tyson Fury has been offered a fight against Brandon Moore. Brandon Moore, 19-1. The one loss was to Richard Torres Jr. back in 2024. Yeah, it's the type of level fight I expect to see Tyson Fury in a comeback. All right, I don't think Brandon Moore is anything spectacular. I watched his last fight on that Salida Promotions card against DeAndre Savage. Nothing spectacular, nothing breathtaking, nothing that I think will in any way, shape or form threaten Tyson Fury. This is a Tyson Fury that is coming out of retirement and needs to fight to get that ring rust gone, and Brendan Moore would be that opponent. Look, nobody would want to see that fight, but if Tyson Fury does want a warm-up fight, this is the level fight you're going to get. All right, if he wants to skip the warm-up and jump straight in the deep end, I'll respect him for it, but I doubt it'll happen. All right, guys, let me know all your thoughts about what we discussed today. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm out here, guys. See ya.